Good morning and welcome to the new edition of My Life Comments. 7 years back, one of the most dreaded terrorists was killed. And after the killing of that dreaded terrorist, people assumed that the organization that he has set up was going to be buried, since there was no proper leader. I'm referring to Al-Qaeda. And the people who believed and presumed that Al-Qaeda is dead are in for a shock. It is very slowly but very surely coming out on its own from the supposedly dormant state. It is the return of the dreaded Frankenstein. And unfortunately, all the advocates of war on terror are in a state of denial. They cannot presume that this same organization, which they had annihilated after a great effort, is once again back, with all the force mightily strengthened and augmented all over. 7 years is a long time and people forget. And today, if we look at the adherents, the fighting militants under Al-Qaeda, there are 40,000 people who are in active arms, about 10 to 20,000 in Syria, 7 to 9,000 in Somalia, 5,000 in Libya, 4,000 in Yemen, and an equal number dispersed through the other countries from Maghreb and Sahel, 3,000 in Indonesia, and 1,000 in India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. From North West Africa to South Asia, Al-Qaeda is a very close-knit organization, and like a great business organization, it has 24 local franchises. The question arises, how could the proponents of war on terror not be aware of it? They were aware. And they purposely kept their eyes shut. There are 4 reasons, basically. First, Al-Qaeda has proved remarkably capable and expert at exploiting the upheaval and instability that was sweeping across North Africa and Middle East in 2011 and 2012. You haven't forgotten this. Obama acclaimed the Arab Spring. As a matter of fact, that Arab Spring was a springboard for Al-Qaeda to jump from its dormant state to an active state. It was during that Arab Spring that Mujahideen rose and roamed across the world in a moment of elation. In March 21, wrote, I wonder whether the West is aware of the upsurge of Mujahideen activity in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Yemen, Arabia, Algeria, and Morocco. Imagine the vast stretch, the whole of Africa practically, and Middle East. Thousands of hardened Al-Qaeda prisoners, whom President Morsi had freed, fled to Libya, Turkey, Syria, Yemen. And by now they were experts in combat expertise, leadership skills, and foot soldiers. A ready-made army put in prison released with one stroke of a pen by President Morsi. And all of them hardened criminals. And the leadership they got when Obama started releasing people from Gitmo. So the foot soldiers from African jails, particularly Egyptian jails, the hardened strategists and the leaders from Gitmo. They combined hands. And what happened was, Morsi, as a matter of fact, was toppled himself. And that was a military coup. And that coup, in fact, enhanced Al-Qaeda's appeal and credibility. It validated the new leader, al-Zawahiri's repeated admirations to the Muslims not to trust the West. The West, which had supported Morsi, kept absolutely quiet when General Sisi overthrew him. It was good for the West, so the West did not object, but it revealed to Al-Qaeda and other adherents that West could not be trusted. They supported Morsi when he was in power. At least they kept quiet. And when Sisi threw him, they just flocked to Sisi. So, not only did they lose faith in West, they also lost faith in the sanctity of democratic process. For all his faults, President Muhammad Morsi had been elected in an open election which happened for the first time in Egypt. And in that open election, he won clearly, without any reasonable shadow of doubt. As a matter of fact, it was long before that the Arab Spring had turned to autumn that Al-Waiki accurately stated that regional and international counter-terrorism cooperation would slacken, would weaken, and become more inconsistent as the Western governments were lulled into a false sense of complacency. And when complacency descends, your thought process becomes much slower and doesn't react. And what Al-Awaki had forecast came to be correct. He very correctly anticipated that the voices sympathetic to Al-Qaeda would have greater freedom and the people would be able to propagate their pernicious doctrine without any objection, without any obstruction, without any impediment. Al-Waiki also perceived very correctly that spreading unrest would create new geographical openings and opportunities for Al-Qaeda intervention. You know, just a few months before he was killed by a drone attack, he said, "Is West aware of what's happening?" According to him, the West was asleep, covered by sheets of impenetrable darkness. Al-Qaeda was emboldened beyond any doubt. The second cause was the civil unrest that unfolded in Syria was promoted by USA, President Obama, as a part of Arab Spring, and that rapidly gave war to an outright civil war. President Bashar al-Assad, supported by Iran and by Russia, and the rebel forces supported by Obama and all the acolytes of Obama, including Iraq, including England, Germany, Turkey. So when the civil war started, a new life was infused in Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda reinvented itself and reinserted itself, became much more relevant. It had become irrelevant as a result of Bush administration It became relevant because of Obama administration. And one of Al-Zawahiri's first official act as Al-Qaeda Amir was to order Giuliani, the Syrian veteran of Iraqi insurgency, to return home and establish Al-Qaeda franchise. And this became Zabat al-Nusra, and now it's known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And this is the most potent fighting force in rebels, supported unfortunately by USA. And even today, because of the activities, President Trump has not been able to withdraw. Doing that would encourage Soviet Russia to go further forward. So this Syria, the civil war, Syria is a country revered by the Muslims as a sacred territory. And they don't want the dirty feet of the West on that. So these two happened. And the third was Al-Zawahiri had a very ambitious strategy. He protected the movement's remaining senior leadership, consolidated his influence in new theaters. It was during his time that Al-Qaeda chapters were established in India, in Pakistan, and also in Far East, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. So, the surviving people became more powerful, influential, and they dispersed from Syria, Iran, Turkey, Libya, and Yemen to practically all over Asia and Far East. Now, another thing happened at the same time, and that was advances in commercial, off-the-shelf digital communication, and successive public revelations of United States and allied intelligence agencies. That public assertions enabled Al-Qaeda to utilize end-to-end encryption technology, and Al-Qaeda's organization Al-Shahab became the official communication department. It has regular contact between Al-Zawahiri and all over the globe, from Levant, Africa to Far East Asia. Now, Al-Qaeda was, as a matter of fact, a very resilient, very effective organization with a command structure, effective communication network, and it was well positioned to slowly step in the shoes of ISIS. ISIS was weakening, and its military position, territorial losses, made it unfit to have the preeminent position it had gained. And naturally, nature abhors a vacuum. Al-Qaeda's determination, closeness strategy made it an ideal replacement for ISIS, and it became the focus point of leading Salafi jihadi struggle. Now, when Salafi jihadi combine hands, that is a terror force to reckon with. Now came the fourth reason. Al-Zawahiri had imposed a moratorium on mass casualty operations. He said, no, we will not kill many people at many times. We will kill 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. The earlier attack on Empire State Building, 9/11, when 3,000 to 5,000 people were killed, was a legacy which he cut. He started killing people with automobiles, 7 people killed, 8 people killed. But the target was that the number should not exceed 3 digits. This was purposely done so that the mass casualty rates are less. There's a moratorium. Even if one man kills one person, that's okay, that's acceptable. Now, what especially happened was that they took an action to ensure that earlier, all the bombings were, mass casualties were for the Muslims. Now they said, no, kill people, but don't kill more people, and especially when the Muslims are there, then the mass casualty number should not be high. Now imagine earlier in Pakistan, whenever the Al-Qaeda would attack, they'll kill hundreds of people. Now the news was 10 people killed, 20 killed, 65 killed, maximum was 107 killed. So what happened? That Al-Qaeda and franchises started exhibiting a face, showing a face that was moderate extremist. ISIS, extremists, Al-Qaeda, moderate extremists, so the lesser evil, and West, foolish as it is, was ready to embrace the lesser evil. It was less unhinged and clearly more palpable rival to ISIS. And this development sported Al-Zawahiri's ancillary strategy. And that was, let ISIS take the limelight, stay in the limelight. Let all the attacks be concentrated on ISIS. And in the wings of ISIS, Al-Qaeda will keep on growing, and that's what it did. So all the heat and all the blows were directed at ISIS. Name the country which did not send its armed forces to fight ISIS. But Al-Qaeda, it was no international coalition. Al-Qaeda was very quietly rebuilding its military strength and basked as a moderate in contrast to unrestrained ISIS. So it changed its very image. It remains a terrorist, but a moderate terrorist which need not be fought, which might come to its senses. Accordingly, with ISIS being still active and Al-Qaeda's regular resurgency, today we face a major problem. And that's a very perilous, very dangerous international security environment. As a matter of fact, 2018-19, these 2 years are going to be most dangerous years after 2001. A 20 years gap, 2 decades gap. Now there is a serious threat, not from one terrorist force, but from 2 terrorist forces. And both the terrorist forces have cultivated a myriad of branches, affiliates, franchises, which enhance their capabilities and ensure their long life. But is the West listening? Not as yet. Is South Asia listening? Not as yet. Passing messages, passing resolutions written on paper have no value. Evil has to be exterminated, and unfortunately, it's not being done. And it's not being done because of culpability of the West, credibility of the best, and the much better formulated strategy of Al-Qaeda, which projects in a new way without in any way compromising its honest terrorist activities. So, let's be prepared for the twin blitzkrieg on the civilized society. See what happens. Thank you.